Why did the dog stop walking when everyone else kept moving? The growl was low, not loud, not aggressive, just wrong. It came from deep inside the Belgian Malinois' chest, a vibration more than a sound, the kind that never happened without reason. Ryder's body stiffened beside her, muscles locking, paws digging into the dirt as if the ground itself had become unsafe. Willow Fletcher felt it instantly, through the leash, through the subtle shift in his breathing, through 4 years of shared instincts forged in places where hesitation got people killed. Ahead of them, the patrol kept moving. "Control your dog," Lieutenant Morrison snapped without looking back. "We're burning daylight." 7 operators advanced in practiced silence, boots crunching softly over gravel and broken stone. They moved like men who had done this 100 times before, because they had, and that familiarity made them dangerous in a different way. Willow swallowed. She was used to this feeling, the tightness in her chest, the knowledge that speaking now would only harden the wall already built around her. She was small, quiet, listed on the manifest as a K9 handler, support personnel. Easy to ignore. Ryder growled again, deeper this time. Willow tightened her grip. "Sir," she said, careful, respectful, "he's detecting something. We should." "We should keep moving," Morrison cut in. "Intel's clean. I trust my plan more than a dog's nerves." A few of the men chuckled, not cruelly, casually, like this was routine. Willow felt the familiar burn of being dismissed, of knowing something mattered and being powerless to force it to matter. She said nothing. They stepped into the valley as dawn crept across the horizon, the light thin and gray, turning the mountains into jagged silhouettes. It was beautiful in a cold, indifferent way, the kind of beauty that didn't care whether you lived or died beneath it. Ryder slowed again. Willow's heart began to pound. She saw it before anyone else did, a glint, almost invisible, a wire stretched ankle-high across the path, thin as fishing line. Her mouth opened. "Keep up," someone muttered behind her. They stepped around it without realizing what it was, without realizing what it meant. Ryder's breathing quickened, his ears flattened. This wasn't just one threat, it never was. Willow felt it then, that creeping certainty that had haunted her since she'd learned the cost of being ignored. Something was wrong, and no one was listening. They halted briefly to review the route. The team clustered loosely, checking weapons, adjusting gear. Willow instinctively moved to a position with her back protected, eyes scanning rooftops and ridgelines without conscious thought. The sniper noticed. Jasper Cole didn't say anything, but he saw how she stood, where she stood, like someone who understood angles, kill zones, escape routes. Not like a support handler. "Valley's a natural choke point," Willow murmured before she could stop herself. Silence followed. Morrison turned slowly. "Excuse me." She felt every eye on her, the familiar weight of scrutiny mixed with expectation of failure. "Nothing, sir," she said quietly. "Apologies." He stared for a moment, then scoffed. "Let the professionals handle tactics." "Professionals?" Willow nodded and stepped back, jaw tight. Ryder pressed against her leg, grounding her. She wondered, not for the first time, if staying silent had been a mistake, or if speaking up would have changed anything at all. They moved again. The valley narrowed. Buildings rose at sharp angles, elevated positions, clear lines of fire. Ryder whined softly. Willow felt the past stir, memories she kept buried. Another valley, another warning ignored, another moment when silence had cost lives. Her hand brushed a scar beneath her sleeve. "Sir," she said again, urgency bleeding into her voice, "we need to stop." Morrison didn't slow. "One more word and you're walking back to base." She stopped talking. Ryder did not. He broke formation, stepping in front of her, body rigid, blocking the path. For a moment, even the team hesitated. "Move the dog," Morrison ordered. Willow looked at Ryder, at the certainty in his stance, at the truth he carried without ego or fear. And for the first time, she didn't obey. "Listen to him," she said softly. Morrison's face hardened. "I won't take orders from a handler." That was when the ground exploded. The blast threw Morrison backward, armor screaming as shrapnel tore through air and flesh. Gunfire erupted from above, below, everywhere at once, perfectly timed, perfectly placed. The ambush Ryder had tried to warn them about detonated in full. Chaos swallowed the valley. Men shouted, someone screamed, blood soaked into dust. And Willow Fletcher stopped being invisible. She moved before thought caught up, body taking over, years of buried training snapping into place. She reached the tripwire first, voice sharp and commanding, cutting through panic. "Don't move," secondary plates on both sides. They froze. She disarmed the trap with hands that did not shake. Rounds cracked overhead. She dropped beside Morrison, already bleeding out, fingers finding pressure points with surgical precision. "Tourniquet now." The medic scrambled. He obeyed her voice without realizing why. She returned fire one-handed, shots measured, controlled. 2 hostiles fell from a rooftop. The men stared. This wasn't support work. This was mastery. As her sleeve tore further, the tattoo emerged, black ink against scarred skin, a trident, a name no one expected to see here. Morrison saw it, his eyes widened. "You're—" "Yes," she said calmly, "now stay with me." She saved them, one by one, while Ryder guarded their flank, teeth and fury protecting the team that had dismissed him. By the time the shooting stopped, the valley was silent except for labored breathing and distant rotors. No one spoke. They didn't know how. Later in the helicopter, no one asked her why she'd hidden who she was. They already knew the answer. Because being right hadn't been enough before. Because sometimes truth isn't ignored because it's wrong, but because it comes from someone people decided not to see. Willow sat with Ryder's head on her knee, exhaustion settling deep into her bones. She didn't feel proud. She felt tired. And quietly resolved. Back on base, the apologies came, formal, public, necessary. She accepted them without bitterness. Not because they deserved forgiveness, but because carrying resentment was heavier than carrying silence. When offered her old life back, the title, the unit, the legend, she refused. She stayed with Ryder. Stayed where listening mattered more than rank. Where warnings didn't need decorations to be true. As the sun set over the mountains, she watched the kennels settle into quiet. Ryder leaned against her leg, steady and sure. "You did good," she whispered. He already knew. Some lessons are learned too late, some almost cost everything, and some are taught by the quiet ones who keep speaking anyway, even when no one listens. Because dignity doesn't shout. It simply acts. Why did no one notice the way the silence followed her after the shooting stopped? It wasn't relief. Not yet. Relief comes later when the shaking starts and the body realizes it's survived. This was something else. A stunned quiet, heavy and uncomfortable, like a room where a truth has just been spoken that can't be taken back. The rotors thudded overhead as the medevac birds settled into the valley, dust whipping through the wreckage of the ambush. The men moved automatically now, loading casualties, checking sectors, covering arcs the way they'd been trained. But the rhythm was off. Every movement passed through her first. Willow Fletcher. The handler. The ghost. She felt their eyes even when she didn't look up. Felt the weight of recalibration happening behind their faces. The human mind scrambling to rewrite a story it had already decided was finished. She ignored it. Ryder stayed glued to her side, ears high, scanning. Even now, even after blood and fire, he didn't relax until she did. and she wasn't ready. Morrison was loaded last, pale beneath the grime, eyes fluttering open and shut. When they lifted him, his hand caught weakly at her sleeve. "You could have told us," he rasped. She paused just long enough. "Would you have listened?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer, couldn't. The helicopter lifted, banking hard over the valley that had nearly swallowed them whole. From above, it looked harmless, a scar in the earth, nothing more. That was how it always fooled people. Inside the bird, no one spoke. No jokes, no post-mission bravado, just the low hum of machinery and the sound of breathing. Jasper finally broke the silence. "Ghost 7, he said, testing the name like it might bite. "They said you were dead." Willow kept her eyes forward. They were wrong. Hugo shifted on his stretcher, pain etched deep into his face. "You saved us," he said, voice thick with shame. "After how we treated you." She closed her eyes briefly. Exhaustion washed over her in slow, heavy waves. "I saved the mission," she replied, "same as any of you would have." It wasn't false humility. It was boundary. She wasn't here to be absolved or celebrated. She was here because she chose to be. Back at base, the chaos swallowed them whole. Medics rushed casualties away. Officers barked orders. Intelligence officers already began pulling footage, replaying moments frame by frame, looking for where things had gone wrong. Willow handed Ryder off only when she had to. The leash leaving her hand felt wrong, like setting down a weapon mid-fight. Captain Shaw stopped her just outside the flight line. "You're coming with me," she said, not unkindly. Willow nodded. She knew this moment would come, had always known. The walk to command felt longer than usual. Every step echoed. Every door seemed louder. Colonel Cross waited inside. He didn't speak at first, just looked at her, the way people do when they're seeing someone they thought they'd lost. "At ease," he finally said. She didn't relax. "You should have stayed dead," he added softly. A flicker crossed her face. "I tried." He sighed, rubbing a hand over his mouth. "You nearly got yourself killed today." "So did they," she replied. "Difference is they didn't see it coming." Cross studied her. Why hide? She thought about it, really thought, about the long nights, the quiet work, the way being underestimated had given her space to breathe again. "Because when people know," she said slowly, "they stop listening to the dog and start listening to the legend. And legends make mistakes." Cross leaned back. "You could come back full clearance, full authority." She shook her head. "Authority didn't save my team in Syria." Silence settled between them. He nodded once. "Then you'll stay, but things change now." "I know." Outside, the news moved faster than she did. By the time she reached the kennels, people were already whispering, already piecing together names and rumors and half-remembered stories. She didn't look at them. Ryder launched himself at her when she opened the gate, tail wagging hard enough to bruise. She laughed despite herself, dropping to one knee as he pressed his head into her chest. "Easy," she murmured. "We're okay." He licked her chin, verified the truth. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the wire, the flash, heard the sound she'd learned to fear most, surprise. She sat on her bunk instead, cleaning her rifle with slow, deliberate care, muscle memory grounding her when thoughts threatened to spiral. There was a knock at the door. Jasper stood there, awkward without a rifle in his hands. "Mind if I come in?" She nodded. "I keep thinking," he said, leaning against the wall, "about how close we were, how stupid." "Yes," she agreed. He winced. "We judged you." "Yes. And you still saved us." She met his eyes. "That's the job." He exhaled slowly. "I don't think I'd have done the same." That honesty surprised her. "Maybe," she said gently, "that's why you survived today." The investigation followed. Briefings, replays, long hours in rooms that smelled like stale coffee and regret. She told the truth, all of it, about Ryder's alerts, about the ignored warnings, about the valley. She didn't embellish. She didn't accuse. Facts were enough. When Morrison woke fully, she didn't visit, not out of spite, out of necessity. Some lessons needed space to settle. Instead, she stood in front of a room full of handlers 2 days later, faces young and tired and hungry for validation. They won't always listen, she told them. Not because you're wrong, but because believing you means admitting they aren't infallible. A hand rose. What do we do then? She thought of the valley, of Ryder's growl. You document, she said. You repeat yourself, you stand firm, and you trust your partner even when no one else does. That night she walked Ryder under the fatting light, the base quieter than usual. He glanced up at her, ears flicking. Everything changed, she said softly. He bumped her leg. Maybe. But some things stayed the same. A dog who told the truth. A woman who learned, the hard way, that being heard isn't the same as being right. And a lesson carved deep into memory. Sometimes the loudest warning is the one everyone chooses to ignore. Why did the guilt feel heavier than the firefight ever had? The base moved on faster than she expected. It always did. Missions ended. Reports filed. Blood washed off concrete. By the third morning, new patrols were already gearing up, boots thudding across familiar ground as if the valley had never tried to kill anyone at all. But inside the men who survived it, nothing was settled. Willow felt it when she walked past them. Conversation stopped half a second too late. Eyes followed, then looked away. Respect had arrived, but it came tangled with something messier, discomfort. People didn't know where to place her now. She no longer fit the box they'd built. She preferred it when they ignored her. Ryder sensed it too. His posture shifted whenever someone stared too long, placing himself just slightly closer to her leg, not aggressive, just present. A reminder, a boundary. They were assigned light duty for 48 hours. Recovery, command called it. For Willow, it meant too much time to think. She cleaned gear that didn't need cleaning, walked the perimeter routes twice as often as required, anything to avoid stillness. Because stillness brought memories. Another briefing room, another commander waving off a concern, another moment where she trusted procedure over instinct. She had learned since then, paid for the lesson in blood. That afternoon, Captain Shaw called her into the operations building again, not for discipline, not for praise, for debrief. Morrison sat at the table this time, pale but upright, bandages visible beneath his uniform. He didn't look at her at first. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and burnt coffee. Let's start from the beginning, Shaw said. Handler Fletcher, walk us through the first anomaly. Willow did, calm, precise, Ryder's initial alert, the tension change, the wire, the terrain analysis. No emotion, just sequence. When she finished, the room was quiet. Morrison cleared his throat. Why didn't you push harder? The question landed heavier than he probably intended. She turned to him, really looked at him. The man who'd nearly died because he'd trusted his certainty more than her warning. Because I've learned, she said slowly, that people who don't want to hear will interpret persistence as insubordination. He flinched. And because, she continued, forcing someone to listen doesn't mean they'll understand. Shaw folded her hands. Do you believe the outcome would have changed if you'd revealed your background? Willow considered it honestly. No, she said, they would have listened to me, not the dog. Morrison's jaw tightened. That distinction matters, she added quietly, because next time it might be another handler, another dog, without a reputation to lean on. Silence followed, not uncomfortable, necessary. The official findings came down that evening. Language careful, responsibility shared, recommendations issued. mandatory K9 integration training. She was named lead instructor. She stared at the order longer than she should have. Teaching meant visibility, authority, exactly what she tried to avoid. She found Ryder in the kennel, sitting cross-legged beside him, forehead resting against his. "They want me up front," she murmured, "teaching." Ryder huffed softly, didn't object. "I like being quiet," she admitted. "Quiet is safer." He licked her cheek. She smiled faintly. "Yeah, I know you don't care." The first training session was scheduled 3 days later. Morrison's team would attend. So would several others. The morning arrived hot and cloudless, the kind of weather that made tempers short and mistakes expensive. 12 operators stood in formation when she stepped out, Ryder at heel. They straightened instinctively, not because of her rank, because of what they'd heard. She hated that part. She stood before them, hands clasped behind her back, voice steady. K9 integration isn't about dogs being smarter than humans, she began. It's about admitting there are things you cannot sense, no matter how trained you are. She watched faces shift, some defensive, some curious. "Your dog doesn't care about your confidence," she continued. "It cares about patterns, changes, threats that don't announce themselves." She paused. "If you ignore that because it comes from an animal or a handler you don't respect, you're choosing ego over survival." Morrison met her eyes then, held them. No challenge in his gaze this time, just acknowledgement. The exercise began. Simulated route, hidden threats, controlled chaos. Ryder alerted early. Subtle shift, a pause, a look back at her. "Hold," she ordered. This time they stopped. They found the device, buried shallow, easy to miss, deadly if triggered. The difference was immediate, palpable. After 4 hours, sweat-soaked and quiet, the group gathered for debrief. Morrison spoke first. "I didn't realize how much we filtered out," he said. "Not intentionally, just habit." She nodded. "Assumptions feel efficient until they are." That night exhaustion hit her like a delayed wave. She sat on the edge of her bunk, boots still on, staring at nothing. Jasper knocked lightly. "You okay?" She shrugged. "Define okay." He hesitated. "Do you ever wish you stayed gone?" She knew what he meant. Ghost 7, the legend, the life before. "Yes," she said honestly, "and no." He waited. "I wish the people I lost were still alive," she continued. "I wish warnings didn't have to be earned with blood, but I don't regret being here. Even after everything. Especially after." Later, alone again, she lay back and finally let her eyes close. Sleep came in fragments. Dreams of valleys and wires and growls that came too late. She woke before dawn, heart racing, Ryder already alert, watching her. "Still here," she whispered. He rested his head on her chest. Some truths don't fade with daylight. Some lessons never stop echoing. And sometimes, being heard isn't about speaking louder. It's about standing your ground long enough for others to realize they should have been listening all along. Why did the quiet feel louder now that people were finally listening? The base had changed its tone, though no one officially said it out loud. There were no banners, no announcements over the loudspeakers, just small shifts, subtle ones. Operators pausing when a K9 team passed. Briefings that included handlers at the table instead of against the wall. Questions asked without sarcasm. Respect arrived softly, almost shy. Willow noticed it in the way people stopped interrupting her, in the way eyes no longer slid past her to find someone more important, in the way Ryder's alerts were acknowledged instead of explained away. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it made her uneasy. She trusted danger she could see, gunfire, wires, valleys that screamed ambush if you knew how to listen. This new attention was harder to read. Praise always was. The second week of training began with mixed units. Not just Morrison's team, others, different cultures, different egos. Same problem. They gathered under the shade netting as the sun climbed fast, heat pressing down like a hand on the back of the neck. Willow stood in front of them, Ryder seated at her side, calm and focused. "Before we start," she said, "I need you to understand something. I'm not here to make you feel bad about what you didn't know. I'm here to keep you alive." A few nods, a few crossed arms. "Dogs don't argue," she continued. "They don't posture, they don't care who's in charge. When they alert, they're telling you something changed. Your job is to figure out why." The scenario was urban this time. Tight alleys, rooftops, echoes that played tricks on the ear. Ryder alerted near a doorframe most people would have walked past. Subtle, almost nothing. One operator hesitated. Could be residual scent. Willow didn't correct him. She let him think, let him decide. He chose caution. They found the cache behind the wall. Later, during water break, she sat on a crate, helmet off, sweat running down her spine. A younger handler approached, eyes nervous. "Staff Sergeant," the woman said, "how do you keep going when they don't listen?" Willow looked at her, really looked, saw herself years ago in that question. "You don't keep going for them," she said. "You keep going for your partner, for the truth, and for the people who don't get a second chance if you're wrong." The handler nodded, shoulders squaring. That afternoon, Morrison joined her on the range. No audience, no formalities. "I replay it every night," he admitted. "The moment you spoke up, the moment I shut you down." She checked Ryder's harness, not looking at him. "Good." He frowned. "Good." "Guilt fades," she said. "Memory doesn't. Let it teach you." He was quiet for a long moment. "I thought leadership meant certainty." "It means responsibility," she replied. "Certainty gets people killed when it isn't questioned." He exhaled. "You could have let us fail." "Yes." "Why didn't you?" She finally met his eyes. "Because that would have made me the thing I hate." The third scenario ended with simulated casualties. Intentional. A lesson in consequence. When it was over, she stood before the group again. "This is what ignoring intelligence looks like," she said, gesturing to the training dummies tagged as dead. "No drama, no speeches, just absence." Silence followed, the kind that stuck. That night she walked Ryder along the far perimeter. The desert sky stretched endless and clear above them, stars sharp enough to hurt. "You feel it too, don't you?" she murmured. Ryder glanced up, tail swaying slowly. "They see us now." He didn't respond. Dogs rarely cared about being seen, only about being useful. She sat on the ground, back against the fence, letting the cool creep in. The exhaustion wasn't physical anymore. It was emotional, the weight of being watched, of being measured. She missed anonymity, missed the freedom of being underestimated. But then she thought of the handler from earlier, the hesitation replaced with resolve. Maybe this was the cost of change. The next morning she received a message from command, intelligence briefing, optional. She almost declined. Almost. The room was small, secure. Naomi Sterling sat inside, eyes bright behind fatigue. "You were right," Naomi said without preamble. "Patterns are shifting, new cells, smarter setups." Willow leaned forward, using decoys. "Yes, and dogs are catching it before sensors." Willow nodded. "They always do." Naomi hesitated. "They want you involved, officially." "What does that mean?" "Advisory, liaison, you'd have access." Willow considered it. Access meant influence. Influence meant responsibility. "And Ryder." Naomi smiled faintly, "especially Ryder." She agreed. Not for status, not for recognition. For the quiet warnings that still needed voices. Days passed. The base settled into a new rhythm, not perfect, but better. Morrison's team integrated fully. Others followed. Small changes, real ones. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Willow watched a patrol step off. A handler walked beside the point man, the dog alerting, the team stopping without argument. She felt something loosen in her chest. Not pride. Relief. Because this time, the growl wouldn't be ignored. Because this time, silence wouldn't be fatal. And because sometimes, change doesn't arrive with noise or fire. It arrives when people finally learn that listening is also a form of strength. Why did the unease return just when everything seemed to be working? It crept in quietly, not during drills, not during briefings where heads nodded and notes were taken seriously now. It came in the pauses between moments, in the way riders' ears twitched when nothing obvious stirred, in the way Willow caught herself scanning exits even in rooms she'd helped design. Success had a way of dulling instincts. She noticed it during an intelligence review 3 weeks later. Satellite imagery projected on the wall, movement patterns circled in clean digital lines. Analysts spoke with confidence, too much confidence. Reduced activity, one of them said. They're adapting, but they're thinning out. Willow leaned back, arms crossed. Or they're pulling us forward. A few heads turned. Naomi Sterling frowned. Explain. Noise disappears before impact, Willow said, not after. The room grew still. Ryder lay at her feet, head resting on his paws, eyes open, watching. Naomi nodded slowly. We've had 3 unexplained false alerts on perimeter dogs this week, different sectors, same timing. They're probing, Willow replied, teaching us to ignore the signal again. That landed hard. Orders came down fast. Increased patrols, mixed units, live overwatch, no assumptions. Willow was assigned to the forward team, not as handler, as operational advisor. She didn't correct the title. The route led back toward the outer villages, not the same valley, but close enough to feel familiar. The land had memory, so did she. Ryder moved differently this time, not anxious, focused, every step deliberate. The team followed his pace without complaint. It should have reassured her. Instead, her chest tightened. Halfway through the route, Ryder slowed. Not a growl, not a stop. A glance. Willow raised a hand. The patrol halted instantly. She crouched, fingers brushing the dirt. Too clean, too deliberate. They want us comfortable, she murmured. Morrison, cleared and back in command, but quieter now, nodded. We pull back. Not yet, she said. We widen. The explosion came anyway. Not underfoot, behind them. Secondary charge, designed to cut off retreat. Training kicked in, discipline held. But the ambush unfolded with brutal intelligence. Fire from angles that suggested weeks of observation, knowledge. They learned, Morrison shouted over the gunfire. Yes, Willow replied, calm in the chaos. From us. Ryder lunged toward a breach point, barking sharp and urgent. Willow followed without hesitation. She didn't think about rank, or history, or fear. She trusted. They broke through as the second wave hit, close, too close. A round grazed her shoulder, heat flared, pain followed later. Ryder took a fragment across the flank and kept moving. That was when something inside her cracked. Not panic. Anger. Controlled cold. She coordinated fire, redirected movement, her voice steady even as her vision blurred at the edges. The team responded instantly. No questions, no delay. They survived because of it. Extraction took longer than planned, always did when plans met reality. On the flight back, Willow pressed gauze to Ryder's wound, hands shaking despite her effort to stop them. You're not allowed, she whispered. You hear me. Ryder huffed weakly, eyes still bright. Back on base, medics rushed him in. Willow followed until they stopped her at the door. She stood there, blood on her hands, suddenly unsure what to do without a leash in her grip. Naomi joined her quietly. He'll be okay. Willow nodded but didn't answer. That night, alone in her quarters, the cracks widened. She sat on the floor, back against the bed, shoulder throbbing, replaying every second, every choice. This time they had listened. This time they had prepared. And people still got hurt. The truth settled heavy. Listening reduced risk. It didn't erase it. Ryder limped into the room hours later, tail wagging weakly, bandage wrapped tight. She laughed a broken sound and pulled him close, burying her face in his fur. "I can't lose you," she said into his neck. "I can't." He rested his head against her collarbone, heartbeat steady. The debrief was harsher than the last. Analysts questioned timing, choices, whether pushing forward had been necessary. Willow didn't flinch. "They were testing boundaries," she said. "If we'd pulled back, they'd have learned fear works. Next time they'd push harder." Morrison backed her, without hesitation. So did the team. Command accepted the assessment. But Willow didn't feel vindicated. She felt exposed. Later, standing alone near the kennels, she watched handlers train under fading light. Dogs alerting, teams responding. It worked. But she wondered how long before comfort returned, before listening dulled again. Naomi found her there. "You're carrying more than you should." Willow didn't argue. "They're talking about rotating you out," Naomi added. "You've done enough." Willow looked down at Ryder, at the scars, at the loyalty that never wavered. "Enough isn't how this works," she said. Naomi studied her. "What happens when the cost becomes too high?" Willow was quiet for a long time. "Then I'll pay it," she finally said, "so someone else doesn't have to." The words scared her. Because she meant them. That night, as the base settled and stars returned, Willow lay awake, Ryder breathing softly beside her. She thought of the valley, of the wire, of the growl that started it all. Listening had changed things. But sacrifice was still the price of vigilance. And she knew deep down that the hardest test wasn't behind her. It was coming. Because the more truth you carry, the heavier it becomes. And some burdens don't ask whether you're ready. They simply arrive. Why did the calm before dawn feel like a goodbye? The base slept lightly that morning, the kind of sleep that comes when something unspoken is already moving toward you. Willow felt it as she tied her boots, as she checked Ryder's harness twice instead of once, as she paused longer than necessary at the door. Naomi's message had been brief: redundant cell, high confidence, narrow window. They were moving without noise now, without testing, without warning. This wasn't about training anymore. It was about ending something before it learned how to survive them. The briefing room was small, hand-picked team, faces she knew, faces that trusted her without needing proof. No speeches, no dramatics. Just maps, timelines, exits that looked cleaner than they would be. Morrison met her eyes. "You ready?" She nodded. She had learned not to confuse readiness with certainty. Ryder sat at her side, alert and calm, as if this was just another walk. Dogs lived in the present. It was one of the things she loved most about him. The approach was quiet, too quiet, no birds, no distant movement. Willow raised a hand. The team stopped instantly. Ryder's body stiffened. Not a growl. A refusal. He planted himself, weight low, eyes locked on a stretch of ground that looked exactly like every other stretch they'd crossed. Willow's heart slowed. This was it. She crouched, fingers brushing his neck, trusted him. "Mark it," she whispered. They did, carefully, slowly. The device wasn't meant to kill, not immediately. It was meant to scatter, to disorient, to separate. Smart. They adjusted, circled wide, cut angles. And still the trap closed. Shots rang out from positions that hadn't existed seconds earlier. Smoke, movement, confusion held at bay only by discipline and trust. Ryder bolted forward, barking sharp and urgent, drawing fire away from the team. No, Willow breathed. A blast tore through the space where he'd been. Time fractured. She moved without thinking, sprinting through smoke and debris, ignoring the burning in her shoulder, the shouting behind her. Ryder lay still. For half a second, the world narrowed to a point so small it hurt to breathe. Then his head lifted. Alive. She dropped beside him, hands already working, voice low and steady even as her chest threatened to split open. "Stay with me," she whispered. "You hear me." He did. The team pushed through, neutralized the threat, secured the site.